Okay, we started the story of Shimshon last week, and finished the first chapter, and now we move on to the second chapter of Shimshon, which is chapter 14, and this translation is page 549. Okay, so it begins, Vayered Shimshon Timnata. Vayarisha betimnata mibnot plishtim. So now, the birth of Shimshon was the subject of chapter 13. We are told, the woman is told, she doesn't tell her husband, the woman is told that your son will be a Nazir all the days of his life, and that he will begin to redeem Israel. He will begin to redeem Israel who are controlling the country, as it says in chapter 13, verse 1. So what's interesting that in chapter 1, in the first chapter, chapter 13, we are told that the woman does not tell her husband that particular detail. And not only that, but first she reports to the husband that I met this man. He had the appearance of an angel, and I didn't ask him where he's from. Yet Shimolo, he didn't already counted in this previous chapter that this person slash angel, lo higid, he did not reveal to the woman he did not reveal to the woman what his name was. And later on in the story, we have, let's find that. Where do we have it again? If not telling, let's see. Comes up another place. Anybody find it? The idea of not informing or not telling comes up already in chapter 13. We'll see it's the theme throughout the Shimshon story of not revealing, of not telling. The Hebrew is lo higid, as Shemo lo higidli. Does it come up again in the chapter or only in that chapter? Yes, where would we have this? I don't find it. We have it again in our chapter, that's for sure. Okay, we'll see. We'll come up in our chapter. Anyway, Shimshon goes to Timnah. He sees a woman there from the Philistines. It's chapter 14. Vayal vayaged aviv u'imo. So here we have Higid. He tells his parents, Vayomer isha ra'iti b'timnata mimnot plishtim v'ata kichu ota li le'isha. So he says, I saw a woman, a Philistine woman, in Timnah. He says to his parents, Kicha ota li, take her for me as a wife. So it's interesting, you have someone going to Timnah, and he sees the Philistine woman, and he says to his parents, he says to his parents, I want you to take her for me as a wife. So that recalls a different story. That recalls the story of Yehuda, right? Yehuda, we are told, Vayered Yehuda me'et echav, vayet adisha dugami u'shmo Chira, vayar sham Yehuda batish Kanani u'shmo Shua, vayikochel vayavo eleha. So in that story, we have Yehuda going down, Vayered, right? He goes down, and here's Vayered Shimshon Timnasa. He goes down to Timnah, and he sees the Philistine woman, and he instructs his parents. I saw this woman. Take her for me as a wife. The 549 is the chapter we're looking at, and the story of Yehuda and Tamar is on page 80. Because on page 80. In fact, it's interesting that the place of Timnah actually also appears in chapter 38. Chapter 38, when Yehuda, after his wife dies, his own wife dies, it says he goes with his friend, the Adulamite Timnata. Vayugal with Tamar lemar, hine chamicha let Timnata goes, so no. And then later on, she stays al derech Timnata. So there's an emphasis over there on the place of Timnah that we goes later in the story. And over here, we also have him going down, seeing and taking. And specifically, there is the Canaanite woman, and here's the Philistine woman. Take this Philistine woman for me. Says what? There's no one about your own people. You have to go and take from the Plishtim Arelim. Now, we should take note of the fact, and this is very interesting, that the term Arelim, the uncircumcised ones, which appears many times in the Bible, but specifically, if there's one particular nation that it appears with, it's always the Philistines. Always the Philistines. Specifically, the Philistines are called Arelim. Let's park that for now, see if we can figure out why that might be. But that is a fact. If you look through the Bible, you can see a concordance. You will see that very often, both in Shoftim and especially in the book of Shmuel, where the Philistines are the main enemy, they're called Arelim. So that's an interesting fact. Leave it for now. Don't even go there. In any event, the parents say to him, Aviv Imo, listen, what do you want to start up with the Philistines for? Marry one of your own. Vayomer Shimshon El Aviv Ota Kachli Kihi Yashma B'Einai. Shimshon says to his father, I guess the father's the main negotiator here, take this one for me. Kihi Yashma B'Einai. She is suitable in my eyes. Now that expression is a very important expression. Kihi Yashra B'Einai. So I want to speak a couple of minutes about the expression Kihi Yashra B'Einai, Yashar B'Einav. That expression we find in other contexts. In fact, it actually is the last verse of the book of Shoftim. The last day, in those days, there was no king. Ish HaYashar, it's the last words of the book. Ish HaYashar B'Einav Yaseh. And that phrase itself is found in the book of Dvarim, right? That when we come into the land, you can't do whatever is Yashar B'Einecha. When you come into the land, you have to set up central places. You can't just sacrifice any place you want, right? But prior to that, it's Ish HaYashar B'Einav Yaseh. That's a critique, actually. So now we have over here this question. Shimshon says, take her for me, Kihi Yashar B'Einai. Yes?
Yashar is obviously playing on Israel. Israel can go either way.
Maybe, it's possible. Yashar is related to Israel. That is certainly true. But it appears many times in the Torah. Vasita HaYashar V'Atov. Many times. It means the right path, straight path, the right path. So what does Yashar B'Einai mean? So Yashar B'Einai is very important in a couple of stories. This is one of them. And the next pasuk says, V'aviv ve'imo lo yadu kimei Hashemi. But his parents did not know that this comes from God. This was God's doing. Ki to'ana hu mevakesh miplishtim. Right, to'ana. So they translate, I think correctly, a pretext. He was seeking a pretext from the Philistines. Uva'etahi. Well, I'll get to who he is. That's the question. It's not clear. Uva'etahi plishtim moshlim b'Yisrael. So yes, the question is, who is he? So let's see. The JPS has a capital H. So they must mean it's God. He is a capital H. If they didn't realize that this is God's doing, for he seeks a pretext from the Philistines, it could be God. Tawada hu mivakesh. It's strange usually to use that phrase for God, hu mivakesh. The alternative is to say that it's God's doing and that Shimshon seeks a pretext. And the difference between the two interpretations, which is a very important difference, is to what extent is Shimshon conscious of the fact that his job is to do God's work, which basically means to destroy God's enemies, which in this particular case are the Plishtim. So To'anach Muvakesh, I would say, is a case of purposeful ambiguity. You really can't tell. It certainly could be God, because God appears just before that. Kimei Hashem He, Or it could be Shimshon himself who seeks a pretext. And in this context, we have the expression Yashra B'Einai. One second. Yashra B'Einai, I would translate, they translate she is the one that pleases me. I would translate it differently. Yashra B'Einai, I would say she suits my purposes. And we have very interesting use of that phrase, Yashra B'Einai, Vatishar B'Einai, in another story. And before I get to the other story, I want to make a contrast over here between two stories. Just one sec. Between two different stories. The story over here of chapter 14, which is Shimshon's wife to be, the woman of Timnah, who it's about whom Shimshon says, Hi Yashra B'Einai, which I translate, she suits my purposes. It's actually, that's chapter 14. But in chapter 16, which is the last chapter of Shimshon, in verse number 4, it says, Vahi acharei chen, vayehav isha b'nachal sorek ushma Delilah. Afterwards, he fell in love, or he loved a woman from Nachal Sorek. Her name was Delilah. That's Delilah. So there it doesn't say Yashra B'Einai. There it says something else, that he loves her. He uses the word to love. Vayehav isha b'nachal sorek ushma Delilah. So I think it is legitimate to distinguish between those two terms. Yashra B'Einai on one hand suits my purposes, in contrast to love. Love doesn't necessarily suit your purposes at all, but it's a true emotion. And where this comes into play is in the following story. It comes into play in the book of Shmuel in a very interesting place. And it's obviously related to two other stories, one of which is the Shimshon story, and that's chapter 18 of Shmuel. If you look at chapter 18 of Shmuel, that's after the Goliath episode, which is chapter 17. And we are told that after David kills Goliath, that all the women come out dancing. And they said Saul killed his thousands and David his 10,000s. And Saul says, what, they give me only 1,000? Him they give 10,000. And from that day on, he has his eye on David, a jealous eye on David. And he decides he wants to kill David, actually. But David, meanwhile, is a very successful warrior. Everybody loves him because he's so successful. So Shaul says to David in Pasuk Yud Zayin, it's on page 613. So Shaul says to David, and we know, by the way, that in the Goliath story, when David walks on the battlefield, David asks the question, what's going to be the one, what will happen to the person that kills Goliath? And they say to him, his family will be freed from all taxes or whatever, and the king will give his daughter to him as a wife. Now, it never says explicitly that Saul said that, but the people are saying, well, whoever kills Goliath will be the son-in-law of the king. So here we have actually in chapter 18, verse number 17, Vayomer Shaul el David, Hine biti agdala meirav, ota etein lecha liisha. My oldest daughter is named Meirav. I'll give it to you as a wife. Achayeli leben chayu vilochem milchamot Hashem. On the condition, because it's like dowry instead of money, here's the stipulation. You can have my daughter as a wife, but on condition that you are a ben chayil, a valiant warrior, and you fight the wars of God. Vishaul Amar means he thought. Saul said, means to himself. Saul thought, Al tehi yadibo. Why should I harm him myself? Why should I kill him? Utehibo yad Philistine, let the Philistines kill him. So that's the idea. The idea is to be a valiant warrior, a ben chayil, and Shaul wants to kill David because he's jealous of him. And by the way, not only does he want to kill David, but remember, he wants to kill David by making it a stipulation of the marriage, so he will turn his wife, David's wife, which is Saul's daughter, into a very young widow. That doesn't seem to bother him at all, right? That's the idea of Saul. That's the idea. Vayomer David el Shaul, mi anochi umi chayai mishpachat David b'Yisrael ki echat. Who am I? He says, and what is my father's house that I should become the son-in-law of the king? So I'm not worthy of that great honor. You're royalty. What am I? I'm a a little family in Bethlehem. What is it? So who am I? I'm not worthy, right? I'm not worthy of this great honor. Vayehi be'et that Meirav bat Shaul with David, it came to pass that by the time it came that Meirav should be married, the daughter of Saul, married to David, she was given to somebody else, Adriel the Mecholati. So David stalls. Probably there's a date by which either you get married or you don't get married. And David doesn't get married. David refuses, actually. And it comes to pass that by the time of the date of marriage, or the stipulation, David didn't accept it. So she's given to somebody else named Adriel HaMecholati. Leave that name out for now, but she marries somebody else. Fine. That's the first daughter. Now it turns out that Saul has another daughter. Michal bat Shaul et David. Now he has another daughter, younger one. His name is Michal. So Michal, 6:13, and Michal loves David. She loves David. It's unusual that it says the woman loves the man. It doesn't happen very often in the Bible. Here it's that way. Vayagidu l'Shaul, vayishar hadavar b'einav. And Saul was told this, and here we have the expression. Vayishar hadavar b'einav, which I translated by us as it suits his purposes. Here as well, vayishar b'einav, it suits his purposes. And here is very striking, because here we have exactly the distinction that I drew in the book of Judges, in the book of Shoftim. This distinction between Yashar B'Einav on one hand and love on the other. And here we have exactly the same distinction. The distinction is that Michal loves David, right? And Saul sees the love of Michal for David as suiting his purposes by Yishar B'Einei Shaul. So now he's going to approach David about the second one. The first one's already married to somebody else, to Adriel the Mecholati. Vayomer Shaul etnenolo, and Saul said to himself again, I'll give her to him. Utilogu mokesh, utibo yad plishtim. So I have the same idea. I'll give her to her, and she'll be a snare unto him, because I'll make the same kind of an offer under maybe slightly different conditions. And this way he'll be killed. And that's it. So I'll be able to rid myself of David, again turning my daughter into a very young widow. Doesn't seem to bother him. David, and Saul said to David, Bishtayim titchatein bihayom. It's a very interesting expression. Bishtayim. Bishtayim means with two of them. The pshat is the second one. You can marry the second one, but the literal meaning is with two. So we'll get back to that. But now he makes a similar offer to David. And Saul doesn't talk directly to David, but he commands his people to speak to David. Vayitzav Shaul et avodav. So Saul commanded his servants, Dabru al David, Balat, speak to David privately and secretly. Hinei chofetz b'cha melech. The king really likes you. The king loves you. Chol avodav, everybody loves you. His servants also love you. V'yata hitchatein b'melech, become the son-in-law of the king. Vayidabru avdei Shaul b'yoznei David et advrim ha'ela. So the servants told David these things. Vayomer David, hanikala b'yenechem hitchatein b'melech. Is it a small matter to marry the king's daughter? And I am a poor man of low esteem. So it's very interesting. He doesn't simply say no. He says something different. I can't afford it. There's dowry. I don't have the money to pay. That's different, right? First time he just pushes them off. Who am I to marry the king's daughter? Doesn't say it over here. He spells it out. I'm low and poor. And they go back to the king. Vayagidu avdei Shaul lo lemar, kadvrim ha'ela diber David. David said the following. Vayomer Shaul, kol tarmu David, ein chayvetz lamelech b'moar. The king doesn't demand a dowry. Kim b'meya arlot plishtim linakem oyevei hamelech. 100 foreskins of the Philistines. It means, you see the word orel with the Philistines here also, by the way. 100 dead Philistines to take vengeance from the enemies of the king. Shaul chashav, and Saul thought, we appeal at David biyad plishtim. And Saul thought, I will cause David to fall by the hand of the Philistines. Same kind of thinking. Vayagidu with David, vayagidu avodav with David et hadvrim ha'eleh. Vayishar hadavar b'yeinei David l'tchaten b'melech v'lo malu hayomim, and the matter suited David. Vayishar b'yeinav, and the time wasn't up yet. V'lo malu hayomim. Vayokom David vayelachu v'anashav vayach b'plishtim 200 ish. Vayavei David et orloteim hambayimalu ma'melech l'tchaten b'melech vayitein lo Shaul and Michal bito leisha. So here, David, the text that we have, the Septuagint says he killed 100, but the text we have says 200. David kills 200. In short, David fulfills the condition, and David is now the son-in-law of the king. Now, why we go through this whole long story, I'll come back to you in a minute. Why do we go through this whole long story? Because here you have actually, very strikingly, a contrast being drawn between love on one hand, and the love is Michal's love for David. But the other two characters in the story, namely Saul, right, and David himself, in the second instance, it says, it uses the expression, Vayishar b'yeinav. Vayishar b'yeinei Shaul, that Michal loves David, because it's a way to get him killed, David killed. And David, who refuses the first offer, he refuses to marry the first daughter, the older daughter, Meirav, but he agrees to marry the second daughter. And he fulfills the conditions of fighting the Philistines, and according to the text we have, not only killing 100 of them, but killing 200 of them. Now the question is, what do we make of this expression, Vayishar b'yeinei Shaul, Vayishar b'yeinei David, and we have exactly the same expression with Shimshon. Now I want that woman from Timnah, I want the Philistine woman, right? Ki yashra b'yeinai, that's the one that's right in my eyes, or I said, that's the one that suits my purposes. So what's interesting is, first let me take care of a small detail. Why does David refuse the first wife but accept the second wife? So all this will be in my forthcoming book on Shmuel, among many other interesting things. But the answer, I think, is very simple. The first, it'll be a while still. The first condition David doesn't like, because the first condition is to be a Ben Chayil, be a valiant warrior and fight the wars of God. The wars of God are never ending. And David knows that if you are a Ben Chayil, that one day, sooner or later, they're going to get you. So David refuses that. That's a non-starter for David. But the second offer is a different offer. That's a specific number, 100. That David, in fact, not only can he manage 100, but he actually kills, according to our text, kills 200. That's different. That's a finite number, and David feels he can manage that. And Vayishar b'yeinav, because in point of fact, what the text suggests to us is David's basic idea, David's basic desire over here is exactly litchaten b'melech. Vayishar David litchaten b'melech. I would say beyond that, it's more than that David wants to be a son-in-law of the king. He wants to be the son-in-law of the king, which is why he actually kills 200. He kills 200 because what he's really saying is, it's not just that I'm going to marry Michal, but I actually lay claims on the other wife as well. We have to remember two things about Meirav and Michal. First of all, Meirav and Michal basically are Kol and Meirav. Rav and Kol fundamentally are more or less synonyms in the Bible. That's number one. And number two, the one to whom she is given, the first wife is given, Adriel HaMecholati. Adriel means the flock of God. Mecholot are musical instruments. The musical shepherd, of course, is another alter ego for David. There's only one musical shepherd in the Bible, and that's David. So the point of the name is, yes, she's given to somebody else. But that doesn't mean necessarily that David doesn't, in a certain way, think about that he has claims upon her. And in fact, we know that the second wife, Michal, is actually given away to somebody else. His name is Palti ben Laish, the one who was saved from the lion, which of course is also David, as David himself says before he fights Goliath. And we know that David demands her back. So the point is, Vayishar b'yeinei David, here we have a very sad story. Here we have two people, two men basically, the king and his general, who are negotiating really not about the daughters at all. It's nothing to do with the daughters. In fact, for David, the first daughter, the 200 means something else. Michal may love David, but as far as David's concerned, Michal and Meirav are actually interchangeable parts, because the goal is not Michal or Meirav. The actual goal is to Hitchaten Bamelech, because if you're the son-in-law of the king, you're one step away from the kingship. And we know that David's already been anointed king in 2 chapters earlier. So that's Vayishar B'Yeinei. And the book of, and Shmuel, actually, the book, is recalling for us 2 stories. One of which is the story of Shimshon, our story on 549. What do you want to say, Sarah?
So, לראות ולקחת, I think it's negative.
It's certainly negative, yes.
Now, it's not pretext, it's more like excuse. It has in Hebrew.
Right, pretext, right. Pretext is an excuse, right. Usually, right.
Negative is going to happen.
For sure. The question is whether, look, the last verse of the book is, in those days, there was no king, Ish HaYashar B'Yeinav Yaseh, and that's the ending of the story of the concubine of Giva. There's no central authority, so people do whatever they want. People mutilate, people would molest this woman, people cut her up into 12 pieces and send her throughout Israel. People go to war, not really because on moral grounds, because they hate the other guy, etc. And all the anarchy and the violence and all that, because there's no king, Ish HaYashar B'Yeinav Yaseh. So that is certainly true. The question actually here in the Shimshon story is when Shimshon says, right, take her from me, Kihi Yashra B'Yeinai, the question is, in the context of the Shimshon story, is it negative or not? My own position happens to be that it's not negative. Not negative at all. He says no the first time because the king says to him, I'll give you my daughter on condition that you're a valiant warrior, a Ben Chayil, and fight the wars of God. And Saul thought, Robert Alter points this out, very true, that the text tells you what Saul was thinking. The text never tells you what, not never, it does in one place, but usually the text doesn't say what David's thinking. David's an opaque character. We know what Saul's thinking. It says 3 times, and Saul thought, why should I kill the guy? Let the Philistines kill him for me. And David knows that if you're a Ben Chayil, you like your special operations or something like that, you go in enough time to the enemy and they're going to get you eventually. By the way, just to reinforce what I'm saying, this idea of why should I kill this guy myself? Let my enemy kill him for me. Of course, the one who actually does that and successfully is David, because David's got a problem with Uriah the Hittite, a problem that David created. Uriah is perfectly fine, but David gets his wife pregnant, and then what's he going to do with Uriah the Hittite? So he decides to get him killed, but he's not going to do it himself. He sends him into the battle, and he instructs Yoav to put him in a place to withdraw the troops from him and to have him killed. Now, in point of fact, and we can't get into this whole thing and say for Shmuel now, because we'll never get out of it, but it's very interesting. But actually, Yoav does not do what the king tells him to do. I have some very interesting thoughts about that, by the way. Not what everybody else says. I think it's a famous read. But the point is, what he actually does, it says in the book of Shmuel, when Uriah returns with the letter he's carrying, which says, kill me. Uriah carries the letter. It says, kill me. It says, Yoav put him in a place that he knew that Bnei Chayil are there. So actually, it's not even clear who the Bnei Chayil are. So are the Bnei Chayil the enemy, valiant warriors? Or Bnei Chayil means that's more the most dangerous place. When you're guarding a city, like every army, there are some places not so dangerous, and some places are dangerous. And that's when you go in the army. You may be in D-Day when you crossed over in the first wave. It was very dangerous. Most people didn't survive that. So the point is, that's the way armies work. So it's not that Yoav actually just puts him in the middle and withdraws from him. He doesn't do that. He actually puts him in a place where they're Ben Chayil, which is the normal army operations, but it's very dangerous. And in fact, he does get killed there. So a Ben Chayil means a valiant warrior, dangerous, and David understands. We don't know. It never says he sees through what Saul is saying, but presumably it sounds like he sees through it. It says, you know something, I'm not worthy, who am I, whatever. And then he stalls, he delays, he stalls, and then That's it. She's given to somebody else. But the second time, that was my point. The second time, it's a specific number. Kill me 100. So David says, once I kill 100, that's it. I'm finished. So that he can do. In fact, he kills 200 because he wants to. He wants both of them his, not just one. I'm not just a son-in-law. I'm the son-in-law. And there you see in chapter 18 already, before you get to all the other stuff, that's part of the whole book of Shmuel, the scheming on all sides. And essentially the scheming of these two people, but the victim is somebody else. The victim actually is this guy's daughter and this guy's wife, right? Saul is perfectly happy to have his daughter turn into a widow. He doesn't care about that. It's unbelievable, actually. And David is thinking about what suits his purposes. He's actually, on the other side is the love. So this is what point I was making too. Now it's even more interesting than that. We'll get to it, but let's get back to Shimshon now. Yes.
It does seem that at least he's got a little more concern for his daughter in the second case, because she's not going to turn into a widow. So if he gets killed, presumably he gets killed before they get married.
No, I don't think so. No, he says. You mean in the second case because it's a stipulation. That's possible, right? It's not clear that he has to kill the 100. In other words, it's not clear what kind of condition it is. There are different kinds of conditions, right? There's a condition where you do X and then you can do Y. And there's a condition where in the event of X, then Y doesn't take place, right? That's a different condition, right, Kitty? It's a different condition. In the event something happens in the future, it nullifies it from now. So it's not clear what kind of condition that is. Conditions are very interesting in terms of law, and especially in terms of halacha and Jewish law. Very interesting. Well, she wouldn't be a widow from a technical standpoint, but she's a widow for the fact that someone she's married to died. Right. That from a human standpoint, she's a widow. That's the point. Okay, let's get back to Shimshon now. Now we're back to, so this is Hiyash Rabbi Enai. The question here is, the real question is for Shimshon, because we're learning Shimshon. And that is, when Shimshon says, right, Hiyash Rabbi Enai, it is true that the last verse of the book, and in general, the expression people do what is Yashar B'Eineihem is generally speaking a negative. But the question is it negative over here? Is the fact that he wants to marry the Philistine woman in the context over here a negative? And I maintain it's not negative, for reasons that the text will tell us. So the point of Shimshon is, yes, normally you shouldn't marry the Philistine woman. That's everybody else's Shulchan Aruch. But Shimshon doesn't have a Shulchan Aruch. Shimshon only has one Shulchan Aruch, to fight God's wars. And that's all he's supposed to do. He's created for that purpose. Even before he's born, he's going to fight the Philistines, and his tactics, and here's the important point about fighting the Philistines. Remember, the Jews don't want to fight the Philistines. The Jews are perfectly happy with the Philistines, as we will see, implicitly and explicitly. So therefore, he's not going to fight as a Jew, and he's not going to fight with the Jews either. He has an army, but they're not the Jewish people. He has a different kind of an army, as we will see. So in other words, he has to fight. He fights them from within. He's not going to fight them as the leader of the Jewish people, since the Jewish people don't care, actually, more than don't care. They complain. They're going to hand them over later on. So therefore, he has to go his own path. He can't fight. He's not fighting as a Jew. He's fighting as God's representative, and therefore he has a different set of rules. And I don't believe in this immediate context it is actually a negative. Because Toanahu Muvakesh, he's seeking a pretext, an excuse to kill the Philistines. Uvaita here, at that time, Plishtim Moshlim, because at that time, the Philistines were ruling over Israel, Moshlim. So that's the point, right? Philistines are Moshlim, but God doesn't particularly want the Philistines to be Moshlim over God's people. Whether the people see themselves as God's people or not, they are. Vayered Shimshon v'aviv v'imo Timnata. Now we have the second time, Vayered. He goes down, like Yehuda. Vayered Yehuda. He goes down to Timnah. And now we have the following story, famous story. Vayavo ad Karmei Timnata. He comes to the vineyards of Timnah. Now remember, Shimshon is a Nazir. And his mother was told that even during pregnancy, she's not allowed to eat any kind of grape or any grape products. So now he comes to a vineyard. So there's a medrash which could be the pshat. Because what happens in the vineyard or near the vineyard, they come to the vineyard, and a lion, maybe the leader of a pack of lions, roars to meet him. So Shimshon is confronted with this lion. It appears that the parents are not there, because he tells them later on. So how come they're not there? So there's a rabbinic tradition, because they came to a vineyard. He's not going to walk into a vineyard, right? They can walk through the vineyard. He says, so he goes around the vineyard. It could actually be, right? And he meets them on the other side of the vineyard. But meanwhile, in the vineyard, there's the lion that comes to meet him. But Titzrach alav ruach Hashem, and the Spirit of God overtakes it. Vayishaseu keshesa hagdi, uma ein biyado. He tears it in pieces, as one might tear a kid, and there's nothing in his hands. He has no weapons. V'lo higid liaviv ulimo eit asher asa, and he doesn't tell his parents. Now we have the second time not telling. He doesn't tell them what happened, his parents. Vayered vayidaber laisha, vatishar b'yeinei Shimshon. Here's vatishar. He goes down, Vayered once again, speaks to this woman, vatishar b'yeinei, she pleased Shimshon, as I translate, she sued Shimshon. Vayoshev miyamim l'kachta. Now apparently, so they have I guess like an engagement. It's going to come back later to take her. He comes back. He goes back. He's curious about the lion. So he goes back and he sees that in the lion's skeleton, there is a swarm of bees and there's honey. Vayurdeyu el kapav. He gathered it into his hands. Notice the play on Vayurdeyu and Vayered, right? You have it in the Talmud, Ridias Apas, the point in the first chapter of Shabbos, is to take out, scoop it up. He scoops up the honey. And he walks and he eats it. He goes to his parents, not with them again. And they also eat it. He doesn't tell them. Now we have the third time. He didn't say that he scooped up Radah. He took the honey from the skeleton of the lion. Vayered aviyu el ha'isha. Once Vayered again, the father goes down. Vayasham Shimshon mishteh. Kiken yasu abachurim. So there's a wedding party. They make a wedding party. So Shimshon gets married to the Philistine woman. They have a wedding party. Vayikirotamoto. When they saw him, they took 30 friends and they sat with him. It was a party. So at the party, Shimshon said, let me tell you a riddle. Literally riddle you a riddle. Chida is a riddle. Achuda is the verbal form. Let me riddle you a riddle. If you can tell me, notice again the word to the tell, lahagid. If you can tell it to me, you can figure out the riddle. Figure it out during Shivat Yimei HaMishteh, during the 7 days Sheva Brachos. If during the Sheva Brachos you can tell me the answer to the riddle, all right, then umitzatem, you'll discover the answer to the riddle. V'natati lochem shloshim sidinim. I'll give you 30 tunics, 30 sets of clothing. If you can't be magid, but if you can, you give me the 30. Riddle us your riddle. From that which eats came out food. From that which is powerful, Yotzam Matok, came out something very sweet. They couldn't tell him the riddle for 3 days. On the last day of the Sheva Brachos, they said to Mrs. Shimshon, the woman from Timnah, Pati etishech, seduce your husband. He will tell us through you the answer to the riddle. Lest we burn you in your father's house with fire. These are the 30 friends they got. Right? What, did you bring us here to make us poor, to impoverish us? Rosh is a poor person. Vatef Geshet Shimshon alav. Vatomer, Raks Neitani, Vlohavtani. You hate me, you don't love me. Hachida Chalata Livnei Ami, Veligo, we got it. You riddled them a riddle, but you didn't tell me the riddle. Vayomer, he says a strange thing. He says to her, Hine uyavi ulimi lo igadeti. I didn't tell my parents. V'loch agid, I should tell you. It's very striking. I didn't tell them, I should tell you. There is lack of communication, right? Looks like a very unpromising marriage over here. But, right. Right. Exactly. Well, clearly he doesn't trust her. But she cried during, probably it's the remainder of the 7 days. The language here, there's some problems with the language. Okay, let's say the rest of the 7 days or on the seventh day. Asher hayolahem amishter, the end of the 7 days, the Shever Brachas. Hayom hashviyi, on the seventh day, vayaged lo, he tells her, ki hetzikatu, vataged achida levnei amah, he tells her, because she was nagging him, bothering him, and she told the riddle to her people. Vayom lo anshe ha'ir, vayom hashvi, on the seventh day, b'terem yavo hacharsa, before the sun sets. Mamatok midvash, what is sweeter than honey? Uma'az meyari, what is stronger than a lion? Vayom lahem, ulei charashtem bi'eglati, if you hadn't plowed with my heifer, the wife, lo matzatem chidati, you would not have deciphered the riddle. But titzrach alav ruach Hashem, the Spirit of God came over him. Vayered Ashkelon, he goes down to Ashkelon, one of the main Philistine cities. Vayach mehem shloshim ish, he kills 30 men. Vayikach ad chalitzotam, he takes their clothing. Vayitena chalifot l'magidei achida, he gives it to the decipherers of the riddle. Vayichar apo, he got angry. Vayal beit avihu, he goes back home. Vatiyeshet Shimshon l'merei ehu asherei alo, and Samson's wife marries one of the companions. That's the story over here, and has several very interesting features for our purposes in terms of understanding Shimshon. And let me just read a few more verses, and then we'll talk about this story. The story continues, Vahi biyamim bimei ketzir chitim. It came to pass later in the season, at the time of the wheat harvest. Vayivkod Shimshon et ishto b'gdi izim. Samson came to visit his wife, bringing a goat, a kid. Vayomer avoa elishti achadra. He said to the father, let me see my wife. Let me go to the chamber to see my wife. Well, that's right. He doesn't know that, though. He doesn't know that. He doesn't know. She was given in the interim to somebody else, not with Samson's knowledge. He got very angry and he left. Now he's coming back. Presumably he doesn't know. Could be he does know, actually, but let's assume he doesn't know. Vayomer of Avia, Amora Marti Kisanos Neta. I said, you certainly hate her after that whole incident. I gave it to your companion. I gave it to your companion. But she has a younger sister. She's even better. The younger sister is better. Take her in place of the older sister. I've had enough with you Philistines. Now I'm going to do harm to the Philistines. Let's stop at this point for a moment and just think about this story over here. So the story recalls actually several things. Just to speak to the first point that we started with, what the story recalls over here is two stories. Let's start with the one we already looked at, the story of David with his and Saul's two daughters, the older daughter and the younger daughter, right? The older daughter being Merav, and David is offered the older daughter in return for being a valiant warrior and fighting the wars of God. And David is not interested in that. So he delays, he stalls until the time is up, it says, right? And then the second daughter, the younger daughter, she loves him, right? And that David does decide actually to marry the younger daughter. He fulfills the condition. And as we pointed out, not only does he fulfill the condition, but at least the text that we have, the Masoretic text, says he kills not 100 Philistines, but 200 Philistines. Literally, you'll marry two today. So David marries the younger, but has claims upon the older as well. In other words, he has positioned himself to being the son-in-law of the king. Now, that story here is paralleled in the story over here. Shimshon, the older one, suits his purposes, right? So he wants to marry, he agrees to marry, he wants to marry the sister. And then, when that doesn't work out, he uses that as the pretext to kill 30 Philistines. Then he runs, then he leaves, he's very angry. And she's given to my wife. Oh, I gave it to someone else. I'm going to marry, you can have the younger one. The younger one, I'm only interested in the older one. The younger one doesn't interest me. And now, because you did this, you took away my beloved wife from me, the one who deceived me, cheated me, and all that, during the Sheva brachas, no less. That's it. I've had enough of you Philistines. I'm going to take vengeance, which he does. So in the case of Shimshon, I think it's clear. He has no use for the older one. He has no use for the younger one. And in each of these two stories, it's a pretext for him, for he seeks a pretext, whether God or Shimshon or both. And the pretext is, the claim is that the reason he's going to kill Philistines has nothing to do with the Jewish people with whom he has no connection in the text, but rather it's an internal problem. It's a fight with his father-in-law. It's a fight with the friends of the father-in-law. It's a fight with the other Philistines. And that's how Shimshon is going to function. That's the story of Shimshon. But the fact of the matter is, there's a third story, actually, about the younger daughter and the older daughter. And love for one and not love for the other. And of course, that's the story way back in Sefer Breshit, coming up soon on our schedule. And that's the story of Yaakov and Lavan. Yaakov finds himself, Yaakov leaves home, right? Yaakov has to run away from home. He finds himself in the house of Lavan, his uncle, soon to be father-in-law. And before he meets Lavan, he meets Lavan's daughter. He goes to the house of Lavan to find a wife, one of Lavan's daughters. Ibnot Lavan, it says explicitly. He's going there to marry a daughter of Lavan. The point is, the first one he meets, the first daughter that he meets, is the younger daughter, right? And it says, Vayahav Yaakov et Rachel. Yaakov loved the younger daughter Rachel. And he said to Lavan, Evadcha sheva shanim b'Rachel bitcha haktana. I'll work for you 7 years to marry Rachel, the younger daughter. So he says explicitly. And the text also says explicitly that Lavan has two daughters. The older one is Leah. The younger one is Rachel. Yaakov loves the younger one. Doesn't love the other one. He loves the younger one. He agrees to work. And then what happens? He's tricked. Lavan tricks him. And Yaakov is married, has a wedding party at night. Lavan makes a party at night. And it's very dark. And the party's at night. And he gives Leah, Yaakov doesn't know it's Leah. He thinks it's wrong. Wakes up in the morning, V'nei Leah. So he goes to Lavan, and he complains to Lavan. Where is that chapter? Was it 30 or 31? Where's that? 29. Where is that? Let's find that. This is an excellent example of what they call intertextuality, how these texts speak to each other. It's a perfect example. It's chapter 29, page number 58 in this translation. Once you see this, it opens up all kinds of vistas for us in terms of an approach. See, it's obvious, actually, but it's not obvious till you see it. So it comes at nighttime, he takes Leah, his daughter, brings her to Yaakov. In the morning, right, he wakes up, and Baboker, Boker is the morning, Boker is when you can discriminate. Levaker is to discriminate. You can tell the difference. Erev, when things are mixed up. La'arev is to mix them up. You can't see well at night. But Boker, in the morning, you can see. So in the Boker, when he gets up in the morning, he behold, it's Leah. Vayomer Lavan mazot ositoli. What did you do? Alo b'Rachel avaniti imach. Why did you deceive me? I work for Rachel. Vayomer Lavan lo yasochem bimkomenu. In our place, we don't do this. Latei tatzira lifnei abchira, to marry the younger one before the older one. Now, next verse. Malei shavuazot. Complete this period, this 7, could be a week. Maybe finish this week. That's how most understand it. And I'll give you this one. So you can marry this one now, after a week. Give me a week. And then if you work 7 more years, that's the condition. If you agree to work for 7 more years, you can marry this one, which is Zot. Vayas Yaakov Cain. Yaakov did it. Vayimalei Shavuazot. And Yaakov completed Vayimalei the 7 years, or maybe completed the week, which ended the first set of 7. Vayitain lo et Rachel bitolo leisha. Vayitain Lavan, etc. So right. Vayavo gam el Rachel, vayahav gam et Rachel milayah, vayavod imo sheva shanim achirot. Now, what's interesting is, so here you have the same story. Here you have the 2 daughters, the older daughter and the younger daughter. In this situation, he loves the younger daughter. He wants the younger daughter. He doesn't love the older daughter at all. He loves one and not the other. That's his perspective. From the perspective of Lavan, though, Lavan has Lavan's interest is probably primarily, his primary interest seems to be to extract 7 more years of work. That's his primary interest. But in addition, perhaps he wants to marry off the older one before the younger one. That's not clear that he cares one way or the other. So what's interesting is here you have a third story, first of the 3. In this story, there's the one that's loved and the one who's not loved. Yaakov, in this case, loves X but not Y. And Lavan is manipulating him to squeeze out 7 more years of work. And it's interesting that the expression that is used over there, both in verse number 27, Lavan says, listen, what can I do? In our town, we don't do these things. We don't substitute the younger for the older. Maybe where you come from, the younger supplants the older one, right? But where I'm from, in our place, we don't do such a thing. However, I'll tell you what, Malei Shavuazot, complete the 7. And I will give you the younger one on condition you work 7 more years. And Yaakov accepts it, Vayimalei Shavuazot, and he completed the 7 years. Now, what's interesting is that 2 things. First of all, you have this third story in the story of David, right? In the story of David, you have this idea of there's a time frame, right? And now is there a time frame? Was that chapter 16 of Samuel, 1 Samuel? And there you have, not chapter 16, chapter 18, I'm sorry. Chapter 18, page 613. And there you have the second one. So Saul wants to marry the second one to David. And they speak to David. And David says, I'll kill 100 Philistines, right? And in verse 26 on 614, Vayishara davar b'yanei David l'tchaten, the matter suited David's purposes to marry the king. V'lo mal'u hayamim, but the time frame was not finished. Lo mal'u hayamim, exactly playing off Breshit, malei shavuazot, vayim malei shavuazot. Not only that, but when he brings these foreskins to the king, with very strange language. Vayakam David vayelchu v'anashav vayach b'plishtim 200 ish. Vayavei David et orlotehem vayimal'um lamelech. Vayimal'um lamelech. Strange expression, actually. He completed, he filled up. In other words, he paid back. But the point is, so clearly, so you have 3 stories. So let's listen to 3 stories, are all related to each other. Notice something else very interesting about the case of Lavan, the case of Lavan and the case of Yaakov. From Yaakov's standpoint, he loves X, but not Y. That's clear. He loves Rachel. He doesn't love Leah. In fact, God sees Leah that Leah was snu'ah, which means hated, literally. Certainly unbeloved, for sure. That may change later. But the one he loves is Rachel. That's as far as he's concerned. And what about Lavan? What is Lavan's thinking about his daughters? So what's interesting is that we are told that Lavan, after he makes the big party, right, the mishteh, and it's dark and all that, makes the wedding party at night. There's no lights. Wedding parties at night. And then it says, and he brings Leah to Yaakov. Yeah, Yaakov wakes up in the morning, he says, Mazot asitali. Verse on page 58. What did you do to me? Mazot asitali. And Lavan says, listen, we can't do that. It's not my fault. Malei shavuazot. Finish this time period of 7. Shuazot. If you finish Shuazot, I will give you this one, referring to Rachel, right? And it says the matter Vayas Yaakov Cain, Vayimalei Shavuazot. And he finished. So in response to Jacob's question, Mazot asituli, what did you do to me? The answer is, okay, finish Shavua Zot, v'dinocha gam zot, v'avodah she'tavodi modi, right? Vayimalei Shavua Zot. So 3 times, we have 4 times the word Zot, once in the complaint, and 3 times. And now there's something very interesting here. Anybody see it? It's extremely interesting. What is it?
I mean, it's obvious. It's obviously at least total interchangeability from Lavan's perspective.
That's for sure, right? Of course, that's my point. That from Lavan's perspective, this is Zot, this one, and that one is no difference. But there's something else that is true. That's not the very clever point over here. I'll tell you the clever point over here. Yes.
In neither situation, either with Merav and Michal, nor here with Rachel and Leah, two goats. So we've got the interchangeable Merav and Michal. They're interchangeable, sort of fungible. The names tell them that they're that. And then with Leah and Rachel, you've got the extra Zot.
That's true.
So neither of those, we never hear from the goods that are being interchanged. They're unspeakable. The only thing you hear,
No,
the narrator.
that's true.
In Carl's part. But other than
Right.
that, we don't hear them vocalize.
That's true. We don't hear them speaking. We do know, however, that maybe true. That's true. But there's another point.
So it's like this thing. It's
Right.
not-
We agree. Exactly. No, agree. Right. For she's just interchangeable commodities as far as Lavan is concerned. That's all true. Yes. Clever point. Yes. Let me just say one thing. I say a lot of clever things, and so do many other people say clever things. That's not what distinguishes my teaching. Distinguishes it. There's always a point to it. Sometimes it's not right, but there's always a point, and sometimes a deep point. That's right. But maybe it's true.
It says here that he loved her more.
Right.
He loved her more than he loved Leah.
That's true. It does say that.
It implies, it's saying right here.
Right.
maybe Leah thinks he hates her, but
Well, the text says, "Vayar Hashem ki snua Leah." God sees that she's hated. So you're right. Right. Could be so. True. That is true. That phrase would not suggest that he hates her, just he loves the other one more. That's a good point. Here's the point I want to make. Of course. The text is a very simple text. The text is the initial, we just read it a couple of weeks ago. The text is the second creation narrative. In the second creation narrative, we are told it's all about the human being being created. Human is at the center, the earthling, Adam. And God says about the earthling, it's not good to be alone. So God brings all the animals for Adam to name. He names all the animals, because the name is what you are. And it says, he couldn't find a helpmate for him. And then it says God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and God took one of his sides, and God built from Adam this other creature. Vayomer Adam, Zotapam, this time, Etzem Eyatzamai Ubasam Yibsari, Lezot Yikarei Isha, Kimeish Ukacha Zot. There you have the triple Zot. And the difference is the excitement. Wow, this one is so different. The Zot there is not interchangeable. The Zot is in contrast to everything else. Everything else. This is the one. Rabbi Fruman, who was a character and a half, Oliver Shalom, I knew very well. So, but he did a wedding. He was beyond. He was in a different planet. This guy, but it doesn't matter. He would say to the groom, "You see all the women in the room? They're all monkeys, as far as you're concerned. This is the only one." He said, "We say, I mean, they're under the chuppah." One time we did a wedding together with. They co-officiated with Aaron Lichtenstein. Oh, Can you imagine 2 of them together? It's like, anyway, they're all monkey. The point is, that's what it is. The Zot in that story is this time is different, and the triple Zot. And not only that, it says that God brought her to Adam. God brings this woman to Adam. In the case of Lavan, Vayaveh, he brings Leah to, but for him, it's exactly the opposite. For him, the Zot means this one, that one. What's the difference? The real point is, I don't care which one you marry. The town has here's the key point, 7 more years. And by the way, this is an important point about Lavan, which is, he actually didn't lie. Here's the funny thing. He is a cheat. The biggest cheats actually always tell the truth. They never actually lie. It's all lies. But it's not technically a lie. Because when Yaakov said to Lavan, if you remember, coming up in the parsha soon, Yaakov says to Lavan, Yaakov loves Rachel, I will work for you 7 years, Barachel Bifcha Tana. 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. What did Lavan say to him? Vayomer Lavan, Tov titio talach, mititio tala isha acher, shvai madi. I'd rather give it to you than anybody else. That's true. He didn't lie. No one else will have her. That's what he said, technically, which is true. 7 years, 14 years, you know what I mean? But the point is, he didn't actually lie. No one else will marry her. That's what he said. Okay, 7 years. What is it? Well, I said you're going to get her, but I didn't say when. No one else is going to know. No one else is going to have you. You can even have her now on condition, because you're an honorable man. 7 more years of work. But that's the point of the result. So here, I would say in terms of Lavan, it's very similar to David and Shaul, and actually Shimshon, which is they don't actually care about either one. Neither one. David's treatment of Michal in general is, would say, poor, to put it mildly. The point is, that's not the concern. Coming to Shimshon's story, I do think there's a critique of David and of Shaul in that story. But I actually don't believe there's a critique of Shimshon. Because in the case of Shimshon, it's different. He has one role and only one role. He has to fight God's wars, and he can't fight them as a Jew. The Jews have zero interest. The Jews are actually part of the problem. So therefore, the only way to fight them is to fight from within. He lives amongst the Philistines. And in fact, after Shimshon, in the very next episode there, he ties the foxes together, and he has them running through the fields, right? And the Philistines said, who has done this? Who ravaged our land with the foxes, with the fire? And the answer is, Samson, right? Let's find that verse. The Philistines say in chapter 15 it is, chapter 15, by verse number 6 on page 552, Vayomru Plishtim, Mi osozot, Vayomru Shimshon, Chatana Timni, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timni, the one from Timnah, Ki wakachat ishto, Vayanola Mereeu, Vayalu Plishtim, Vayisrafu Ota, V'yetavia Ba'esh. The Philistines then kill her father and her. They burn them. And then Shimshon says, I've had enough of you Philistines. Touching my beloved father-in-law and his daughter. It's unbelievable. That's what he says. I've had enough now. Now I'm going to get you. So the whole point of it is, the whole thing is, obviously, he doesn't care about the father-in-law. He doesn't care about the so-called wife. He doesn't care about his friends. But these are all pretexts. As the text says, pretty much straight up, To'ana hu mevakesh, which could well be Samson as well as God. But it's certainly God. In other words, God is seeking a pretext to kill the Philistines. We're God's enemy. And Shimshon is the vehicle to fight God's wars. I don't believe there's a critique of Shimshon. Yeah. Yes.
To contrast the triple zot, there's a quadruple zeh. Vayomar Levon Yaakov, Hinei Hagal Hazeh, Hinei Hamatzevo Asher Yorisi, Beni V'Yecho, Ein Hagal Hazeh, V'Yedo Hamatzevo, Mori V'Avo, Hagal Hazeh.
Right.
And then comes again, Es Hagal Hazeh.
Right.
4 times
Right.
Zeh.
Right.
When Jacob is pursued by Lavan, and Lavan says, okay, I'm not going to fight you. We're going to make a treaty. And 4 times he uses Hazeh.
Right. So the question is, right, it's an interesting point. What to make of that? That's because that's the story where he actually splits from Lavan completely. That's the treaty where they cross the boundary with the rocks, and etc. So yeah, I have to think more about that. I hadn't thought about that. I have to think more about that. It's a good point. Yeah.
Is there also maybe a parallel when Shimshon he kills the 30 Philistines?
Yes.
When Moshe has the fight, he kills one of the Egyptian soldiers. And
Well, we have a lot of wars. The point over here is
the point at which each of them gets identified as being the opposite.
Oh, that's true. That part is true. 100%. That part is true. Of course, the difference is that the one that Moshe kills actually is the one who's beating the Jew. the ones that Shimshon kill are simply Philistines. They're the 30 in Ashkelon, which of course is an important Philistine city. But his job is to fight wars against the Philistines. That's what he has chosen to do. He's not really given much of a choice, actually. That's his obligation. Now let me get to two other points about Shimshon. Yes, Judy, you want to say something? Yes, Shmuel.
Yeah, just textual underline to your point about Shimshon's not Jewish identity. The Philistines don't even identify him. I mean, constantly in the text,
Right.
Related to their tribe or their
right.
people. So
100%.
He's related only to his father-in-law.
No, 100% right. That is right. I had that in mind, and thank you for explaining that explicitly. Chatan HaTimni. He is the son-in-law of the one from Timnah. They don't say Shimshon the Jew. It's quite the opposite, by the way. Now, they know probably he's Jewish in some sense, because later on they go to the tribe of Judah. They say, hand him over to us. And the tribe of Judah hands him over, basically. But actually, the way he lives his life, in no way does he live his life as a Jew. There's absolutely no intimation whatsoever that he lives his life as a Jew. And I wanted to make, yes, Sandra, what do you want to say?
Where the 30 invitees to the Shabbat will begin, and in the book of Samuel,
Yes.
Amnon's story, the Rabbi, his friend, Amnon's actually friend was his first cousin. His friend is an evil helped the plot to snare Tamar. So in both those cases, I'm wondering if it's not also a play on wrath. They were up to no good, and it also shows the thought of the narrative, which is that these weren't real friends. Not know that, but clearly in the
Right.
story, that guy is no friend of his. He tells him to plot for them to seduce and sleep with his sister. And in this case, also they're up to no good.
Right.
They snare Samson as well.
Could be. Here for sure, there's a play on the word Ra and the word the Mere'eo Asher Me'olo is a play on Ra and Reah, that's for sure.
To try to find him.
Right.
He's not called a Reah. He's called I think he's called a
No, not Chaver.
but it's a benign word. So basically, the author of Samuel knows to use Reah when it's Ra. And if Samson is playing on the book of Samuel, showing Samson, he's also using the Reah to show that they're up.
It could be that in that case. I don't think it's always the case, though, because there are other cases of Reah, which is simply a Reah. Hushai is David's Reah.
Situation where we're comparing both cases where they snared the woman.
Could be. It's possible. There actually is another case of the 30 Re'im. I think you had somebody else in mind, actually. The 30 Re'im. What? Yes. Mereya, you're right. 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 Mireya, that is true, actually. Mireim is often negative in the Bible. That is for sure true. That's right. That's a good point. But the story actually that is related to Shimshon's 30 so-called friends is the story in Sefer Shmuel, actually, a different story. It's when Shmuel invites Shaul when he first meets him. He invites him to a party. There are 30 people at the party. And they're already the intimations of discord. Let me get to the 2 points I want to make of that. Yes. What time is it now, first of all? Go ahead. I'll get to the line, Nani. I'll get to the line. We skipped over that. I'll get back to that. That is an important story. Yeah, but okay, when he comes back to you. Let me make a different point here about Shimshon. So Shimshon is, we know that he's not allowed to drink wine. And we also know that in the story of the vineyard, he actually would appear he doesn't go into the vineyard. He separates from his parents in the vineyard. And what's interesting also is actually that the woman whom he actually loves, he falls in love later on with Delilah, which is in the second part of the Shimshon story that we'll get to next week. But he loves this woman as opposed to using the woman. He loves her, which is his undoing. And the woman that he loves, her name is Delilah. And where is she from? In chapter 16, verse number 4. The woman is from a place called Nachal Sorek. Now, the word Sorek we actually encounter in the Chumash at the end of Sefer Breshit. In the blessing, we have noted already in the beginning of our session this morning that there's some parallels to the story of Judah. Judah and Tamar. He goes down, he sees, he takes Timnah. And what's interesting is that the blessing of Judah and the tribe of Judah will figure in the next story. The tribe of Judah will hand him over, actually, to the Philistines. So the blessing of Yehuda, who's the leader, who's the king, as it were, the blessing of Yehuda is Lo Yosur Shevet Mihuda Muchoket Mi Ben Raglav Ad Ki Yavo Shilo. That's the blessing of kingship. And then in chapter 49, the last parsha of Sefer Breshit, we have the following statement about Judah. Statement is, so nations were gathered to him, page 107 in this translation, Osri la gefen iro, v'lasoreka b'ni atono, ki beis bayayin levusho, u'v'dam anovim suto. Here they translate, he tethers his ass to a vine, his ass is full to a choice vine, soreka. He washes his garments in wine, his robe in blood of grapes. So the blessing of Judah emphasizes very, very, the white and the, Judah is blessed with two colors, white and red, right? Which makes total sense given that he's the king. He's the king of blessing of kingship in the book of Breshit, given a blessing by Jacob, his father, and Jacob has two great enemies in the book of Breshit. Who are the two enemies of Jacob? Lavan is and Edom. Lavan, Esav and Lavan, the two enemies of white, and red. So the point is, it's all obvious, isn't it? So the point is, you see the wine with Judah. You see, Nachal Sorek, the but the point is, I'm getting to the Nachal Sorek business. Is it a little Nachal Sorek, given the fact that Judah figures prominently, I would say as normative Jews, as leading Jews, as kingly Jews potentially, as the ones who hand over Shimshon. So in the first part of the Shimshon story, he comes to a Kerem. In the second part of the Shimshon story, which is undoing actually, he loves a woman, Benachal Sorek. Vineyards you got to stay away from. The Nazir, as the Gemara says, the Nazir walk around the vineyard. But the woman that he loves actually is the dangerous woman. The fact that he loves her is even more dangerous. I'll get to that in a minute. Yeah.
Isn't the word Dalit an early wine cluster?
Dalit, I don't know.
Isn't it just that Dalit means a cluster of early cluster of grapes?
I have no idea. I have to check that.
Why does Nachal Sorek mean that she's dangerous? Because that's what
It doesn't mean that per se that she's dangerous in a different context. We know she's dangerous.
Why does it imply that?
It implies she's dangerous because he's a Nazir. He's not allowed to get close to grapes. That's the point. He has to avoid the grapes. And the point is you have to avoid the wine. And you have someone who lives, Benachal Sorek, which I presume, given all the Judah references, she lives in wine country. She lives in Napa Valley, you know what I mean? Whatever it is. So that's not the place that you got, as the Gemara says about Shimshon in the first story. He comes to a Kerem and he separates from his parents. Why? Because he's not going to walk into a vineyard. Because he's a Nazir. That couldn't even be the pshat. Anyway, we know that she's dangerous. I'm pointing out there are all kinds of interesting literary effects. And now, let me get to two other points before we stop. I want to make 2 points about Shimshon. And here's the first point. Shimshon is a Nazir. And we're going to talk more about the Nazirut because we know that he's not the standard Nazir. Because the standard Nazir takes a vow to be a Nazir. And Shimshon took no vows. Shimshon was born a Nazir. Normally, so it's the opposite in a sense. He's born a Nazir. Before he's born, he's in the fetus. He's already a Nazir before he's born. So the word Nazir, the actual literal meaning of the word Nazir is one who was separate. One who was separate. So Shimshon is one who was separate. So there's the I would say there's the chapter in the Torah about the Nazir, the laws of the Nazir, and then there's something else. Leaving aside the laws of the Nazir, I would say there's the Nazir personality, the character of the Nazir. The character of the Nazir is different. In other words, I would say the Mishnah, what the Mishnah tries to do. The Mishnah always, by the way, the Mishnah always has an agenda. Every set of Mishnayot has an agenda. If it didn't have an agenda, we wouldn't bother with the Mishnah. The Mishnah Dafka is trying to construct a certain set of laws in a particular way. Now, the Mishnah's interest in the Zirut, I think, in general statement, is to take a Nazir and to put the Nazir essentially as Jews have 613 commandments, the Nazir has 616. But the Nazir for the Mishnah is not radically different. It's a temporary thing. It's Stam Nazirut, 30 days. It's 30 days. It's a short amount of time. It's to take the Nazirut and to essentially put it within the normal strictures of Jewish practice, of Jewish law. That's true of the Mishnah. When you look at the Bible, leaving Shimshon out of the equation, there's actually another Nazir. Shmuel may or may not be a Nazir. I'll get to Yosef. That's what I'm getting to Yosef. But before you get to Yosef, who's called the Nazir twice, by his father and by Moshe, Nazir Echav. That is true. That's what I want to point out. There's actually another Nazir. There's a famous Nazir in the Bible. It appears in two places. It appears in the book of Kings, and it appears in the book of Yirmiyahu. And it's Yonadav ben Rechav. Yonadav ben Rechav appears in Kings, the story of Yehu, but he also appears prominently in the book of Yirmiyahu, in Jeremiah. There's a whole chapter. God instructs Yirmiyahu to go to the Rechabites. These are descendants of Yonadav ben Rechav, and to invite them to the temple and to offer them to drink wine. He bring them to the temple, and he says to them, Yirmiyahu, so good to see you. We have all kinds of delicious wine over here. Why do you drink some wine? So they say to Yirmiyahu, we don't drink wine. Because Yonadav, our father or whatever he is, our ancestor, told us, we are Nazarites. We don't touch wine. So therefore, we're not going to drink any wine because we have a family tradition. We keep our traditions. So what's interesting is that not only did Yonadav tell them not to drink wine, but he told them something else, not to buy houses. And that's actually very instructive. First of all, the Rechabites apparently have not taken vows to be Nazirim. They are like Samson, actually, Rechabites for life. But the second interesting feature of it is the Chumash says nothing about buying houses, about buying property, about settling. The Nazarites, you know what they remind me of? The Rechav? The Gypsies, actually. The Gypsies are very interesting. The Gypsies maintain their identity by not living in one place. They're constantly moving around. There was a time in my life I was very interested in the Gypsies. I did a lot of reading about Gypsies, how they maintain their identity. And the Rechabites are Nazirim for life. And what's interesting for our purposes, like Shimshon, they're totally other. And of course, God says about the Rechabites, you Jews, look at the Rechabites, how they keep their own traditions, because their ancestor, Yonadav, told them. And I'm telling you all the time, you don't listen to me. So therefore, you're exiled and they're going to stay here. That's the story of. My point about the Nazir is, there's a Nazir personality. Now we get to Gail's point, which is, there is one person in the Torah that's called a Nazir on two occasions. That's Yosef. Not only is Yosef called a Nazir by his father and by Moshe in Zos HaBracha in the two blessings, but even more than that, what is in particular striking is that the blessing that is given to Joseph, both in Breshit and also in Zos HaBracha, should accrue, says the Torah, in both places. Tiyeno l'rosh Yosef u'kod kod nazir echav. The blessing shall accrue to the head of Joseph, to the one who was separated from his brothers. So the head, of course, in the Chumash, right? The Chumash calls the Nazir. Chumash describes the Nazir as Rosh Nizro, because he can't cut his hair. He shall bring, on the day when he finishes his Nazirut, he shall bring the head of his Nazirite being. So it's not just the word Nazir, actually, but actually even as the sense of the head. So what struck me many years ago was that Yosef is a Nazir in the sense, he's a Nazir in the sense that he's separate. Joseph is separate. When he's with his brothers, they don't actually get along with Joseph very well. And when he's in Egypt, they don't get along with him too well either. In other words, when he's in the land of Canaan, they throw him into a pit. And when he goes to Mitzrayim, they throw him into a pit. The jail is called the pit. So Joseph is separate from in every sense. And interesting, by the way, is that the rabbinic tradition, I think, understood this very well, because it faults Joseph. Joseph is very complicated. Exactly. It presents Joseph as self-centered. And the presentation of Joseph as self-centered is he stands in front of the mirror playing with his hair. Right? What? Your father is in mourning. You're playing with your hair. So the rabbinic tradition, in more than one place, talks about Joseph as playing with his hair, which of course is a symbol of not just the symbol of the Nazir, but the problematic side of the Nazir. The reason some of our tradition doesn't care for the Nazir is because there's an element of hubris, I would say. What makes you so special? Well, why are you the high priest, you know? So the point is, in thinking about the Joseph and the Shimshon connection of the one who's totally separate, something else struck me as very interesting about Shimshon in relationship to Joseph. I'll tell you what it is. In the case of Joseph, what marks Joseph and Joseph's amazing ability, actually, is his ability to interpret dreams. That's his ability. He's able to, he is a dreamer himself, but he also interprets dreams. Maybe they're connected. He's the interpreter of dreams. He interprets the dreams of the baker and the butler, and he interprets Pharaoh's dreams. And that's what catapults him to great heights, is the insight that he has, whether it's simply a divine gift, or whether it's human ingenuity, or whether it's both. That's an interesting question. In the case of Shimshon, actually, it's not dreams. It's riddles. And Shimshon actually is interesting because he both poses riddles and he also solves riddles. For example, in the very next story, where he fights against the Philistines, and we'll start with that next week, but he fights against he kills many Philistines with the jawbone of an ass, and after he kills the Philistines, he says the following, which is on top of page 553. He says, Vayom Shimshon, Bilechi hachamor, chamor chamorotayim. Bilechi hachamor, it's a little epigraph. Bilechi hachamor, with the jawbone of a chamor, the jawbone of an ass, chamor chamorotayim. What does chamor chamorotayim means? Like chamorim chamorim in the Chumash. Piles and piles. Bilechi hachamor, so he plays with the word chamor. That's the epi. Bilechi hachamor, chamor chamorotayim. That's an interesting epigram. It's a riddle. And then he says, then he explains his own riddle. With the jawbone of a chamar, I've killed 1,000 men. So he's a riddler, but he also is somebody who interprets the riddles. And let me say something about the word riddle. I think in Batman you have a riddler. Is it Batman? What are those? The Riddler? Right. The word riddle actually in English carries with it a negative connotation. So-and-so was riddled with bullets, you would say. To riddle somebody carries with not just a taunting, and not just hostile thinking, but sometimes even very hostile actions. To riddle. So with Shimshon is chuda. Let me tell you a riddle, okay? There's something about that. Of course, the riddle is going to be his pretext. The riddle is a pretext. I'm not sure he knows how it's going to end up, but it's not a neutral act on the part of Shimshon. So you have over here, the riddle is first of all an act of, it's a special gift that he has, parallel to the dreams actually. And the point of it is that in each of the two cases, you have somebody who is specifically chosen by God to carry out God's will. In the case of Shimshon, it's to kill God's enemies. In the case of Joseph, it's to bring the brothers down to Egypt to carry out God's covenantal plan. As Joseph himself says, right? Now, Joseph in the beginning just thinks it means to feed them. He doesn't understand the full implications, but he knows, he says, listen, I have nothing against you. Because God did this to save you. It's all part of God's plan. Joseph says it twice, actually. Now, he doesn't understand till the end the other piece of God's plan to enslave the people as part of the covenantal formula. Yes, Mike. What?
I remember what my question was.
Go ahead.
I was trying to figure out whether or not one could determine whether or not it was God or Shimshon that had the pretext.
Yes.
And I was looking at the question of the riddle that he asked at that point, which seems like a very odd, like, what is he doing here? Why is he asking this 30 years? Either that this is his plan. He said he was even wanted his wife to, he wanted to tell his wife.
Right. It's very unclear, right? Right.
Or the guy is just, a Bulgarian who, trying to get, greedy and trying to use all the accoutrements of office and so on for a particular, make a little money. But I mean, other than that, I mean, it suggests that it is his plan.
Right. There's no, right. Right. It's certainly, I would say it's certainly intended minimally to create discord. When you invite 30 people to your house for a party, and as they're walking out, he says, remember, you owe me, if you have a credit card, you can pay me now. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. That's not intended to win friends and influence people. You know what I mean? So the point is, and that's what they say, why do you invite us here in the first place? To impoverish us? Now, the point is, so I would say, without question, it's a hostile act. Whether he actually intends from the very beginning that he's going to kill the Philistines to pay back, this I don't think. I mean, it doesn't sound that way because it sounds like he always says it because she's nagging him to death. But it's certainly true that afterwards, that's a pretext. Once they kill her and the father, whom he dislikes, this is it. I've had it with you people already. That's for sure that he's off on this path from within to kill the right. Now, yes, please.
I just wanted to, when Shimshon killed the lion,
Yes.
A lion is a symbol of the Buddha.
Yes, it certainly is. Took the words out of my mouth. We'll get there. Very, very good. So we'll get to the lion next week. The lion is a symbol of Judah. That's for sure true. And that's very interesting. It would suggest further evidence that one of the underlying motifs over here, Shimshon is not working with the Jews. I mean, he does help the Jews because he kills the Jews' enemies, whether they know it or not. But he's certainly not working in tandem with them. And the tribe of Judah actually wants to hand them over. In fact, Shimshon will say to them, hand me over is one thing. You don't plan to kill me, do you? No, we're not going to kill you. Just going to tie you up and let them kill you. That's what they say to him. That's the tribe of Judah. So the point is, let me make one last point. Do I have 2 minutes left? Yeah. Okay. I want to make one last point about this business of, and we've seen this over and over again, about not telling. How could I tell you the riddle? I didn't even tell my own parents, right? The angel doesn't tell Manoach who he is, right? Doesn't tell the woman. The woman doesn't ask him. I didn't tell me. So there's something about that's very, I want to suggest, and we'll get next week. Next week we'll start with the lion and all the other stuff as well. Try to finish Shimshon. If not next week, it'll take 2 more weeks. And that is that Shimshon's connection to God is very deep. He's God's creation, actually. For example, in the story of Shimshon, he prays to God twice. You don't find other judges praying to God in the same way. There's something about Shimshon that's unbelievably close to God. It's a very tragic side to the story, especially the second part of the story. And basically, I think that what does Shimshon in at the end is not the cutting of his hair. The cutting of his hair is reflective of something else. What does him in, actually, and what he's not allowed to do is to be intimate. He can't give away the secrets. And what the undoing of Shimshon, herein lies, I think, the tragic side of it. The problem is, he loves this woman. Now, the woman is bad news from top to bottom, that's for sure. Terrible person. But the fact that he loves her and ultimately tells his deepest secret, which is God's secret. Because God is not saying much in the story. God is not telling. And it's clear throughout the story there's the theme of being silent, of not being intimate. Because the intimacy is with God. He prays to God, he's close to God. God responds to Shimshon. So that's something that from the very beginning, this theme of not telling is very significant. So for next week anyway, what we'll do is we will get back to the business of the first riddle, of the lion and the honey, and then we will just finish up these chapters, and we'll start with Shimshon and Delilah. Maybe a few more observations about Nazirut, and after we finish that, then we have the 5 chapters at the end of the book, and if we have time, the book of Ruth. Okay, we'll stop here then.